He felt the laughter before he saw it, a thin cutting sound sliding across polished marble and settling in his chest like a splinter he could not pull free. Ethan Carter stood at the edge of the executive hallway, fingers wrapped around a plain brown envelope, shoulders squared, breathing slow, pretending the moment did not matter. His shoes were scuffed, the left toe peeling slightly, and he knew every man in tailored suits noticed. They always noticed. A whisper drifted from behind him, careless and sharp. "Who let the janitor in?" Another voice snorted. The sound spread, small at first, then confident, feeding on itself. Ethan kept his eyes forward. When you raise 2 children alone, you learn quickly which battles drain you and which ones break you. This was neither. It was just noise. At the center of the group stood Grant Hollis, the kind of man who wore wealth like a birthmark. Perfect hair. Perfect smile. The posture of someone who had never been told no. Grant glanced Ethan up and down, lingered on the shoes, and laughed openly, loudly, as if performing for the room. "You're lost," Grant said. "Deliveries go through the back." Ethan answered evenly. "I'm here for the board meeting." The hallway reacted like he had thrown a match. Laughter burst out, fuller now, crueler. Grant wiped imaginary tears from his eyes. "That's rich," he said. "What are you supposed to be, a motivational speaker?" Ethan lifted his head and met Grant's gaze. His voice stayed calm. "I'm your boss." For half a second, silence hovered, stunned and weightless. Then Grant laughed harder, bending slightly, slapping the table near the wall. "I needed that," he said. "Man, you should try comedy." Ethan did not move. He did not explain. He did not defend himself. He thought of Lily's backpack by the door at home, the broken zipper he kept meaning to fix. He thought of Noah counting coins on the kitchen table, serious as an accountant. He thought of rent, groceries, bedtime stories read twice because they asked. This meeting was not about pride. It was about stability. Behind Grant, the boardroom door opened. The sound was soft, but it cut through the laughter like a blade. A woman stepped out first, silver hair pulled back, eyes sharp and observant. Marianne Wexler, chair of the board. She did not look at Grant. She looked directly at Ethan. "Mr. Carter," she said clearly, "you're here." Grant's smile froze. He turned, confusion cracking his confidence. "Marianne," he said, "what is this?" Ethan nodded once. "Yes, ma'am." Marianne's attention shifted to Grant, her tone cooling. "Mr. Hollis, please stop speaking." The hallway fell silent. Executives who had laughed moments ago stared at the carpet. Someone swallowed loudly. Grant tried to recover, forcing a chuckle. "This is a joke," he said. "Right." No one answered him. Another board member stepped forward. "As of this morning," he said, "Ethan Carter has been appointed interim chief executive officer, effective immediately." Grant stared at the man, then at Ethan, then back again. "That's impossible," he snapped. "This is my company." Marianne stepped closer. "You were permitted to run it," she said. "You do not own it." She gestured toward Ethan. "He does." Grant's jaw tightened. He turned on Ethan, anger flashing. "You," he hissed. "You think you belong here?" Ethan spoke quietly. "I belong wherever my decisions affect people's lives." The words landed heavy. Grant opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time, uncertainty crept into his eyes. Ethan felt his pulse steady. He had walked into this building carrying fear like extra weight. Now he set it down. Marianne addressed the group. "We will proceed to the conference room." She looked at Ethan. "Please." Ethan stepped forward. Executives moved aside instinctively. Grant remained rooted, watching, the world shifting around him. As Ethan passed, Grant muttered, "This won't last." Ethan paused. He turned just enough to answer, "It only needs to." The conference room doors closed behind him. The laughter was gone. In its place sat something heavier, something permanent. Outside the glass, the city moved as it always did, indifferent and immense. Inside, a single dad with scuffed shoes took the seat at the head of the table, and the room waited for what he would do next. He rested his hands on the table and listened to the hum of the building, the distant elevators, the muted sirens far below, reminders that life continued regardless of titles. Faces watched him, measuring, recalculating, wondering whether this calm would crack. Ethan remembered mornings packing lunches before dawn, nights balancing bills, the promise he made to never let fear decide for him again. He spoke at last, not loud, not rehearsed, simply true, and the truth changed the temperature in the room. "We will fix what is broken," he said. "We will tell the truth, even when it costs us. And we will earn back trust, one decision at a time." No applause followed, only nods, but that was enough. Somewhere outside, a clock chimed the hour. Ethan breathed in, steady, and the cliffhanger settled, because everyone sensed it, the fight ahead, the resistance coming, the man who had laughed plotting his return. Ethan knew it too, and he welcomed it, because the next move would decide not just his job, but the future of every person who depended on this place to feed their families tonight. Outside the room, Grant stood alone, fury tightening his chest, already dialing allies, already rewriting the story. Inside, Ethan felt no triumph, only resolve, a quiet readiness forged by years of loss. He glanced once more at the city, then at the faces before him, and chose patience over spectacle. The meeting began. Questions followed. Decisions loomed. And as the doors stayed closed, the first chapter of a reckoning locked into place. No one realized yet how much would be lost before it ended, or how courage would be tested repeatedly by everyone. The silence after the announcement did not feel empty. It felt heavy, like the air itself had thickened, pressing against chests, forcing lungs to work harder. Ethan could hear it, the faint buzz of fluorescent lights, the distant hum of traffic far below, the subtle rustle of expensive fabric as executives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. No one spoke. No one dared. Grant Hollis was the first to move. He laughed once, sharp and brittle, the sound of a man trying to grab control before it slipped completely out of his hands. "This is a misunderstanding," he said, looking around the table, searching for agreement. "We're all friends here." No one answered him. Ethan sat still, hands folded, posture relaxed but deliberate. He did not look at Grant. He looked at Marianne Wexler, who sat across from him with her fingers steepled, eyes unreadable. Grant noticed the lack of attention, and it rattled him more than anger ever could. "Marianne," Grant said, forcing a smile, "tell me this is some kind of test." Marianne leaned back slightly. "It is," she said. "And you failed." Grant's face flushed. "You can't just replace me with him," he snapped, finally pointing at Ethan. "He doesn't even look like he belongs here." Ethan felt the words land, familiar and dull. He had heard them before, in different forms, from different mouths. He remained silent. Thomas Klein, another board member, cleared his throat. "Mr. Hollis, your appearance-based judgments are part of the problem." Grant turned toward him, incredulous. "You too." Elaine Porter folded her hands on the table. "Grant, sit down." The command was quiet, but it carried weight. Grant hesitated, then pulled out a chair and dropped into it, his movements sharp and resentful. The power shift was undeniable now, and everyone in the room felt it. Marianne turned to Ethan. "Mr. Carter, before we proceed, I want the room to understand why you're here." Grant scoffed. "Oh, I'd love to hear this." Marianne ignored him. "You all know Ethan Carter as a former operations strategist. What you may not know is that he has spent the last 8 years turning around failing logistics firms while raising 2 children alone." Grant rolled his eyes. "A touching biography." Ethan finally spoke, voice steady. "You don't have to like me." Grant snapped back. "Trust me, I don't." Ethan met his gaze calmly. You just have to stop hurting people. The words landed like a slap. Grant's jaw tightened. This is business. Elaine leaned forward. Business doesn't excuse negligence. Marianne slid a folder across the table toward Grant. Quarterly projections inflated by 20%. Layoffs approved the same week. Executive bonuses were increased. Employee complaints ignored. Grant flipped the folder open, hands shaking slightly. You approved these numbers. We approved what you presented, Thomas said. And that's exactly why we brought Mr. Carter in. Grant slammed the folder shut. So this is about control. You didn't like how I ran things. Marianne shook her head. It's about trust. And you lost it. Grant leaned back, eyes narrowing as he looked at Ethan. You planned this. Ethan did not deny it. I prepared for it. Grant laughed again, but this time there was fear beneath it. You think you can sit in that chair and make the hard calls? You think you understand pressure? Ethan's voice softened. Pressure is choosing between rent and groceries. Pressure is explaining to your kids why the lights went out. You don't know pressure. The room went still. Grant stared at him, stunned. You're using pity. Ethan shook his head. I'm using perspective. Marianne stood. Everyone else followed, chairs scraping quietly. Grant remained seated, looking up at them, confused and suddenly smaller. Effective immediately, Marianne said, Mr. Carter has full executive authority. Mr. Hollis, your role is suspended pending further review. Grant shot to his feet. You can't do this. Elaine met his eyes. We already have. Grant turned to Ethan, voice low. You think they'll stand by you when things get ugly? Ethan answered honestly. I think the truth will. Grant's lips pressed into a thin line. He gathered his things slowly, deliberately, as if moving too fast might shatter the illusion that he was still in control. At the door, he stopped. This isn't over, Grant said. Ethan nodded. I know. Grant left. The door closed with a soft click, but it echoed like thunder in Ethan's chest. The board members sat again, the tension easing slightly. Marianne exhaled. That was necessary. Ethan nodded. It won't be easy. Thomas smiled faintly. Nothing worth fixing ever is. Ethan glanced around the table, seeing not enemies, not allies, but responsibility. Lives tied to decisions he would make. Futures balanced on numbers and integrity. He straightened his shoulders. Then let's get to work. Outside, Grant stood alone in the hallway, dialing his phone, already planning his next move. Inside, Ethan Carter began the fight he knew would define everything that came next. Ethan didn't sit behind the CEO desk right away. The office was too clean, too perfectly arranged, like it had been staged for a photograph. A leather chair faced the windows, angled just enough to feel powerful. The desk held a polished pen set he didn't recognize, a small sculpture that looked expensive without being meaningful, and a framed photo of the skyline that felt like a brag. The room smelled like fresh paint and money. He walked past the desk and stopped at the window instead. 32 floors up, Chicago looked like a model city, tiny cars crawling along streets, people reduced to dots, the lake stretching wide and indifferent. From here, everything seemed controllable. From here, it was easy to forget that downstairs, someone might be counting quarters for the bus. Ethan pressed 2 fingers to the glass. Cold. Solid. Real. He had been in this building before. Not as a visitor. Not as a spectacle. As a worker. As a believer. 8 years ago, he'd worn a suit that actually fit, hair trimmed weekly, coffee in hand, optimistic enough to think loyalty was rewarded. Back then, he was an operations strategist with a reputation for solving problems other people avoided. He'd loved the feeling of taking chaos and making it make sense. He'd loved it because order felt like safety. And he needed safety. Claire had been pregnant then. They'd planned everything, a bigger apartment, a small savings account, a future that didn't involve choosing between medicine and rent. Ethan worked late because he thought it was building something. Claire teased him for being married to spreadsheets, but she always kissed him goodbye like she understood the dream behind the exhaustion. Grant Hollis was different back then too. Still arrogant, still loud, but not yet hollow. They were closer than colleagues, almost friends. Grant would slap Ethan's shoulder and call him the machine whenever Ethan pulled off a turnaround. Ethan didn't know then that Grant's praise wasn't respect. It was ownership. The first time Ethan saw the rot was during a meeting about budget cuts. Grant leaned back, feet on the table, and said, "Layoffs. Clean sweep. We'll replace them later." Ethan frowned. "Those are families." Grant smiled as if Ethan had told a childish joke. "Families don't belong in business." That sentence had landed in Ethan's chest like a blunt weapon. Claire's face flashed in his mind. Their unborn baby. Rent. Groceries. The fragile piece of ordinary life. Ethan had pushed back. "If we cut that many, operations collapse. We lose knowledge. We lose trust." Grant's eyes hardened. Trust doesn't pay dividends. Ethan walked out that night, not because he quit, but because he needed air. Claire was waiting at home, feet swollen, smiling anyway, asking about his day. He didn't tell her everything. He didn't want her carrying his anger in her body. He just held her hands and said, "Something's wrong here." Claire squeezed his fingers. "Then we'll find a way out." They tried. Then the accident happened. An icy highway. A late-night grocery run. A truck sliding out of control. The sound of metal screaming. Ethan waking in a hospital room with stitches and a ringing silence where Claire's laugh should have been. He remembered a doctor's mouth moving, the words not fitting into his brain. "We did everything we could." He remembered the NICU. 2 tiny babies, tubes and monitors, the beeping steady like time refusing to stop. Lily and Noah. His whole life, suddenly fragile and screaming for protection. Bills came fast. Grief came faster. Ethan sold the car. Then the furniture. Then the idea of later. He took work anywhere he could find it. Warehouse shifts, delivery routes, overnight security. He learned to sleep in fragments. He learned to feed babies with one hand while signing paperwork with the other. He learned that people who promise help often vanish when it gets expensive. He also learned something Grant Hollis never had. When life strips you down, you find out what matters. And what matters doesn't care about your ego. A knock at the office door pulled him back. Jennifer Hale from HR stepped in, holding a thick stack of folders. She looked tense, as if she wasn't sure she was allowed to breathe in this room yet. "You asked for exit interviews," she said. Ethan nodded. "Thank you." Jennifer hesitated. "Most CEOs don't start there." Ethan took the folders. "Most CEOs aren't trying to rebuild trust from the inside out." Jennifer's eyes softened slightly. "Fair." Ethan flipped through the first folder. Complaints. Burnout. Fear. People describing managers who screamed at them, quotas set by people who never touched the floor, hours demanded without pay. He turned pages quickly, absorbing patterns. Toxicity wasn't random. It was designed. He opened another folder and froze. A name printed on the cover. Claire Carter. His throat tightened so suddenly it felt like the air was gone. His hands held the folder carefully, as if gripping it too hard might tear the paper and damage the memory inside. Jennifer noticed. "I didn't know she worked here," she said softly. Ethan swallowed. "Briefly," he managed. "Before the accident." Jennifer's voice dropped. Her exit interview was flagged years ago, but it was buried. Ethan opened the folder slowly. Inside was a scanned page of handwriting. Claire's writing. He recognized it instantly, the way she looped her L's, the way she pressed harder at the end of sentences like she meant every word. It wasn't long. Just one line, underlined. Grant Hollis doesn't see people. He sees pieces. Ethan stared until the words blurred. He hadn't known she wrote that. Or maybe he had, once, and his grief had crushed it into the corners of his mind where painful truths go to hide. Jennifer cleared her throat gently. "Mr. Carter, are you okay?" Ethan closed the folder carefully. He took a long breath. "Yes," he said, though his voice came out quieter. "And no." Jennifer nodded, understanding without needing details. Ethan looked up at her. "Thank you for bringing this." Jennifer hesitated. "What are you going to do?" Ethan turned back toward the window. The city still moved. People still lived. Kids still waited for parents to come home. Nothing paused for grief or anger. "I'm going to fix what he broke," Ethan said. Then, softer, almost to himself, "and I'm going to make sure no one here has to choose between feeding their kids and keeping their job." Jennifer's eyes widened slightly. "That will make enemies." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I know." As Jennifer left, Ethan sat in the chair behind the desk for the first time. The leather felt foreign under him. He placed Claire's folder to the side, within reach, like a promise. On the desk, his phone buzzed. A message from Nora, the babysitter. "Noah keeps asking if you're coming home for dinner. Lily is watching the door." Ethan stared at the screen, chest aching. He typed back, "I'm trying. Tell them I love them. Tell them I'm building something." He set the phone down and looked at the company seal on the envelope still in his bag. Grant had laughed at his shoes. But Grant didn't know about the scar beneath Ethan's calm. And soon he would. Grant Hollis did not knock. The door to the CEO's office swung open hard enough to rattle the glass, announcing his arrival before his voice ever could. He stood there for a moment, framed by polished wood and fury, jaw tight, eyes burning, suit immaculate as armor. Ethan looked up from his laptop but did not stand. He did not offer a greeting. Grant broke the silence first. "You're enjoying this." Ethan closed the file he was reading and folded his hands calmly on the desk. "Sit down," he said, "or leave." Grant laughed once, sharp and humorless. "You really think you get to talk to me like that?" Ethan met his eyes. "I do." Grant stepped farther into the room, pacing slowly, hands moving as if he were still addressing a board that answered to him. "You know what this is," he said. "This is a tantrum. The board panicked, and you're the emotional bandage." Ethan's expression didn't change. "You're welcome to believe that." Grant stopped pacing and leaned over the desk, voice dropping. "You don't belong here. These people don't respect you." Ethan rose slowly from his chair. The movement was unhurried, deliberate. "They don't have to respect me," he said. "They just have to stop being afraid." The words landed, and Grant flinched before he could hide it. He straightened quickly. "Afraid? You think fear built this company?" Ethan tilted his head slightly. "I think fear kept it quiet." Grant scoffed. "You're soft. This place eats soft men alive." Ethan stepped around the desk, putting space between them that felt intentional. "Soft men don't survive what I've survived." Grant's eyes narrowed. "Here it comes," he said. "The sob story." Ethan shook his head. "No story. Just facts." Grant laughed again, but the sound wavered. "You're here because you lost everything," he said. "Because life hit you, and you couldn't handle it." Ethan's jaw tightened. "You're wrong." Grant pressed on. "You came crawling back to the one place you felt powerful." Ethan took a step closer. "I came back because you're burning this company down, and I won't let you take 1,000 families with you." Grant stared at him, stunned. "Families," he repeated, spitting the word. "Always families." Ethan's voice stayed level. "Do you even know the names of the people you laid off last week?" Grant didn't answer. Ethan nodded once. "Exactly." Grant's face hardened. "Business isn't personal." "That's what people say," Ethan replied, "when they don't want to feel the damage." Grant clenched his fists. "You think you're better than me?" Ethan didn't hesitate. "I think you're scared." The word hit like a crack in glass. Grant's mouth twisted. "Of what?" Ethan met his gaze steadily. "Of consequences." For a moment, Grant looked like he might explode. Then the anger shifted, replaced by something colder. "You know what's really happening," he said. "You're making enemies." Ethan gestured to the open door. "Then don't be one." Grant shook his head slowly. "You have no idea how this building works. People smile while they sharpen knives." Ethan's voice softened, and that somehow made it worse. "I know." Grant studied him, searching for weakness, for arrogance, for anything he could twist. "You weren't always like this," he said. Ethan's eyes darkened. "Neither were you." The silence stretched between them, thick with memory neither man wanted to name. Grant finally stepped back. "You'll fail," he said quietly. "And when you do, I'll be waiting." Ethan opened the door. "Then wait outside." Grant hesitated, humiliation flickering across his face. Being dismissed hurt more than being argued with. He turned to leave, then stopped in the doorway. "You want stability," Grant said without turning around. "Then don't pretend morality wins wars." Ethan answered calmly. "Integrity outlasts them." Grant left. The door closed softly, but Ethan felt the aftershock long after the sound faded. He exhaled slowly, tension settling into his shoulders. The encounter had confirmed what he already knew. Grant would not stop. He would not reflect. He would not apologize, not in any way that mattered. Ethan returned to his desk and opened the next file Jennifer had prepared. High-risk departments. Names highlighted. Patterns emerging. One name stood out. Miles Rourke. Chief Financial Officer. Too smooth. Too careful. Too loyal to Grant. Ethan leaned back and stared at the ceiling, thinking of Lily's voice the night before, asking if he would be home for dinner. He thought of Noah counting coins, lining them up like they were soldiers guarding hope. He thought of Claire's handwriting, the sentence that had warned them all years too late. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You're playing a dangerous game." Ethan didn't respond. Instead, he forwarded the message to legal, documented the time, and added it to a growing file labeled simply, "Truth." He stood and walked back to the window. The city was darker now, lights flickering on floor by floor. Somewhere down there, Grant was calling allies, spinning narratives, sharpening knives. Ethan felt no triumph, only resolve. Because he knew something Grant never would. The man who never apologizes never changes. And the man who never changes eventually loses everything. Ethan picked up his coat, glanced once more at the desk, and headed home. His children would be waiting. Dinner would be simple. The fight ahead would be brutal. But for tonight, he would be exactly where he needed to be. And tomorrow, he would keep going. Ethan did not announce the audit with drama. There was no fiery email, no emergency siren, no all-caps declaration meant to scare people into silence. He announced it the way he announced everything now, plainly, calmly, without apology. At 9 sharp the next morning, every department head received the same message. Independent review. Full access. Cooperation expected. Questions welcome. Panic immediate. By noon, whispers ran through the building like electricity. People leaned into cubicles, doors closed too quietly, voices dropped too suddenly. Executives smiled too wide. Assistants avoided eye contact. Fear always traveled faster than truth, and Ethan knew that if he didn't control the narrative, someone else would poison it for him. He called an all-hands meeting. The auditorium filled slowly. Employees filed in with guarded expressions, hands folded, shoulders tense. Some looked hopeful. Most looked tired. Ethan stood on the stage wearing a simple jacket, no tie, nothing that suggested distance. When the room finally settled, he stepped forward and let the silence do its work. "I won't insult you," Ethan began, voice steady, "by pretending you don't know something is wrong." A ripple moved through the crowd. "We are conducting a full, independent audit of financials and executive decisions," he continued. "Not to punish. To understand." Someone near the front raised a hand, hesitant. "Does that mean layoffs?" Ethan nodded once. "Layoffs are frozen during the audit." A murmur rose, half relief, half disbelief. Another voice called out, sharper. "Is this just optics?" Ethan met the question head-on. "I'm a single father," he said. "If I lie to you, my kids pay the price too. This is not optics." Silence fell again, heavier now, but different. Less fear. More listening. After the meeting, executives descended like vultures disguised as colleagues. The CFO, Miles Rourke, approached with an easy smile that never touched his eyes. "Bold move," Miles said. "Audits can be disruptive." Ethan nodded. So can dishonesty. Miles chuckled softly. Of course. Let me know how I can help. Ethan watched him walk away, already filing the interaction under caution. That evening, Ethan arrived home late. Lily was asleep on the couch, book open on her chest. Noah lay on the rug, Dinosaur clutched tight. The babysitter whispered updates. Ethan thanked her, then sat on the floor between his kids, letting the quiet wash over him. This was why he couldn't fail. Not pride. Not power. Peace. After they were tucked in, Ethan opened his laptop at the kitchen table. An email sat unread, flagged urgent. Independent audit firm. Subject line brief, ominous. He opened it. The first sentence hit like a blow. Preliminary findings indicate deliberate financial misrepresentation. Ethan's stomach tightened. He read on, slower now. Inflated projections. Deferred liabilities. Authorizations traced upward. Names attached. Grant Hollis. Miles Rourke. Ethan closed the laptop and stared at the dark screen, seeing his reflection layered with memory. Claire's words. The layoffs. The laughter. The shoes. He picked up the phone and called Marianne Wexler. "We have fraud," he said when she answered. There was a pause. Then, quietly, "How deep?" "Deep enough to hurt people," Ethan replied. "And it's ongoing." Marianne exhaled. "We suspected. We needed proof." "You have it," Ethan said. "But Grant won't go quietly." "He never does," Marianne agreed. "Proceed carefully." The next morning, tension tightened across the building. The audit team arrived early, laptops open, credentials visible. Miles Rourke smiled too much, joked too loudly, offered coffee like hospitality could hide numbers. Ethan watched, said nothing, documented everything. By afternoon, rumors leaked. Stock dipped. Journalists called. Ethan issued a brief statement. Internal review underway. No further comment. Transparency mattered, but timing mattered too. Jennifer from HR approached quietly. "People are scared," she said. Ethan nodded. "So am I." She studied him. "You don't look it." Ethan managed a faint smile. "That's practice." That night, Ethan read bedtime stories twice, voices softer, hugs longer. Lily asked, "Are you fighting the mean man again?" Ethan paused, choosing honesty without burden. "I'm fixing something that was broken." Noah yawned. "Will it break us?" Ethan swallowed. "No," he said firmly. "I won't let it." After the kids slept, Ethan returned to the kitchen table, documents spread wide. He saw patterns now, connections too neat to ignore. This wasn't carelessness. It was strategy. Grant hadn't just run the company badly. He'd bent it. A notification pinged. Unknown number. One message. "Walk away." Ethan stared at the words, then took a screenshot, saved it, and forwarded it to legal. He added the time, the context, the calm certainty that intimidation was the last refuge of the guilty. He leaned back, exhausted but steady. The audit wasn't just an investigation anymore. It was a line drawn. On one side, fear and control. On the other, truth and consequence. Outside, the city glowed, indifferent. Inside, Ethan felt the weight of what he had started. The audit would expose more. It always did. Enemies would surface. Pressure would rise. And Grant Hollis would not stay silent. Ethan closed the files, turned off the light, and headed to bed. Tomorrow, the truth would demand its price, and he would pay it, because the cost of silence had already been too high. The building felt colder the next morning, even though the heat was on and the lobby smelled like polished wood and expensive coffee. Ethan noticed it the moment he stepped off the elevator. People moved differently, quicker, tighter, as if the walls had ears and the air had teeth. The audit team was already on the floor, badges visible, laptops open, voices low and professional. That alone made the executives nervous. But Ethan could see something else behind the nervousness. A shift. A warning. Jennifer Hale met him outside his office with a folder pressed to her chest like armor. "They're already trying to spin it," she whispered. Ethan unlocked his office and motioned her inside. "Who's they?" Jennifer hesitated, then said the name like it tasted bitter. Miles. And Grant's Circle. They're telling people you're here to destroy the company. That you're unstable. Ethan set his bag down slowly. Unstable how? Jennifer's eyes flicked away. They're using your family. Saying you'll make emotional decisions because you're a single dad. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice calm. Of course they are. Jennifer watched him carefully. Does it bother you? Ethan met her gaze. It bothers me that it works. He didn't say more. He didn't need to. They both understood what it meant when power decided the best way to discredit you was to turn your humanity into a weakness. A knock interrupted them. The CFO, Miles Rourke, entered without waiting. He wore a pleasant smile, the kind that belonged on a billboard, not in a crisis. Morning, Miles said brightly. I hear the auditors are enjoying themselves. Ethan nodded. Truth is sometimes entertaining. Miles chuckled, leaning lightly against a chair. You know, Mr. Carter, I've been thinking. The market doesn't like uncertainty. Investors get spooked. Ethan held his stare. Investors get more spooked by fraud. Miles's smile faltered for half a heartbeat, then returned. Of course. Just saying, we should be careful about messaging. Too much transparency can be misinterpreted. Ethan's voice stayed even. Transparency doesn't create problems. It reveals them. Miles laughed softly, like Ethan had told a clever joke. Right. Well, let me know if you need anything. He nodded politely and left. Jennifer exhaled. He's scared. Ethan nodded. And dangerous. The rest of the day moved in clipped, tense increments. Meetings. Calls. Legal briefings. Auditor questions that dug deeper than anyone liked. Ethan answered what he could, refused what needed counsel, documented everything. He walked the floor once, stopping to greet employees, listening to small comments that carried big truths. We've never seen anyone push back. Thank you for freezing layoffs. Be careful. At 5, Ethan checked his phone. 3 missed calls from an unknown number. Then his personal line rang. He answered. This is Ethan. A woman's voice on the other end was tight with urgency. Mr. Carter. This is Principal Markham from Lakeview Elementary. Ethan's stomach dropped. Is something wrong? Lily and Noah. They're safe, the principal said quickly. But we need you to come here. Immediately. Ethan's hand tightened around the phone. What happened? A pause. A man attempted to pick them up. Ethan felt the blood drain from his face. Who? The principal hesitated. He identified himself as family. His name is Grant Hollis. For a second, Ethan couldn't breathe. Then everything snapped into motion. I'm coming, Ethan said, voice low and controlled. Do not release them to anyone. Lock the office. Call security. We already did, the principal said. He left when we refused. Ethan hung up and grabbed his coat. Jennifer looked up in alarm. What is it? Ethan's eyes were cold. Grant. Jennifer's face went pale. Oh my God. Ethan didn't answer. He was already moving. The drive to the school blurred into red lights and clenched fists. Ethan's hands shook on the steering wheel, not from fear for himself, but from the image in his mind, Lily's wide eyes. Noah's small hand gripping a backpack strap. The thought of Grant's smile in a hallway, now aimed at children, made Ethan's vision narrow with rage. He reached the school and ran inside. The office door was closed. A counselor stood outside, speaking quietly into a radio. When she saw Ethan, she stepped aside and opened the door. Lily and Noah sat on small chairs, knees drawn up, cheeks wet. The moment they saw him, they both launched forward. Daddy! Noah cried, burying his face into Ethan's chest. Lily clung to Ethan's waist so tight it hurt. He said he knew you, she whispered. Ethan knelt, wrapping them both in his arms. I'm here, he murmured. You're safe. I'm here. Noah sniffed. He smiled. But it was wrong. Lily's voice shook. He said you were busy and sent him. Ethan closed his eyes. A slow breath. He pulled back just enough to look at them. "Listen to me," he said, gentle but firm. "No matter what anyone says, you never leave with someone unless I tell you first. Not ever." They nodded quickly, still trembling. The principal stepped forward. "Mr. Carter, we're so sorry." Ethan stood, keeping one hand on each child's shoulder. "You did the right thing," he said. "Thank you." On the way home, the car was quiet except for Noah's occasional sniffle. Lily kept glancing toward the windows, as if expecting Grant's face to appear again. Ethan's voice stayed calm, but inside, something had hardened into certainty. Grant had crossed a line. That night, after the kids were asleep, after Ethan sat beside their beds and watched their breathing slow, he went to his kitchen table and opened his laptop. Not for business. For protection. He filed for a restraining order. He contacted legal. He notified the board. He documented the school incident in writing, precise and unemotional, because facts were bullets in court. At midnight, his phone buzzed again. Unknown number. One message. "Next time, you won't get there first." Ethan stared at the screen, then took a screenshot and forwarded it to legal with one sentence. "This is escalation." He sat back, heart pounding, and understood the truth fully now. The audit wasn't just exposing fraud. It was cornering a man who believed consequences were for other people. And cornered men didn't play fair. Ethan turned off the kitchen light, walked down the hall, and paused at his kid's doorway. Lily's hand rested on Noah's blanket, protective even in sleep. Ethan whispered, "I won't let him near you again." Then he stepped into the dark, already knowing tomorrow would not be about spreadsheets or board votes. Tomorrow would be war. Morning came without softness. The sun rose, traffic moved, coffee brewed across the city, and yet Ethan felt as if the world had tilted slightly off its axis. He stood in the kitchen staring at the coffee mug in his hand, untouched, replaying Lily's words from the night before. He smiled, but it was scary. That sentence cut deeper than any threat Grant could send. Ethan drove the kids to school himself. He walked them to the door, spoke quietly with the principal, confirmed procedures, emergency contacts, passwords, protocols. Lily held his hand tighter than usual. Noah kept glancing over his shoulder. When Ethan finally let them go, he waited until the door closed behind them before turning away. Only then did he allow the anger to surface. At the office, the atmosphere was electric. News of the attempted pickup had reached the board overnight. Legal teams filled conference rooms. Security doubled at entrances. No one laughed anymore. When Ethan stepped off the elevator, conversations stopped mid-sentence. Marianne Wexler met him in the hallway. "We're calling an emergency board session," she said. "Now." Ethan nodded. "Grant will come." "He already confirmed," Marianne replied. Confidently. That told Ethan everything he needed to know. The boardroom filled quickly. Lawyers lined one wall. Security stood near the door. Grant Hollis entered last, unbothered, dressed impeccably, wearing the faint smile of a man who believed he still owned the narrative. His eyes locked on Ethan, challenging. Grant took a seat and leaned back. "This is dramatic," he said. "All over a misunderstanding." Ethan didn't respond. Marianne spoke instead. "You attempted to remove Mr. Carter's children from school without authorization." Grant spread his hands. "I wanted to meet them. I was worried about him." Ethan's voice was quiet but sharp. "You went to their school." Grant shrugged. "I introduced myself. That's all." Elaine Porter leaned forward. "You identified yourself as family." Grant smiled thinly. "Metaphorically." Ethan finally stood. The movement alone shifted the room's focus. "Do not play with words," he said. "You tried to scare me." Grant scoffed. "You're projecting." Ethan's jaw tightened. "You crossed a line." Grant leaned forward, eyes glittering. "You took my company." Ethan met his stare. "You endangered my children." The room went still. Marianne raised a document. "A temporary restraining order has been filed and granted pending hearing. You are not to approach Mr. Carter or his family." Grant laughed once, hollow. This is absurd. At that moment, the door opened again. 2 federal investigators entered, badges visible, expressions neutral. "Grant Hollis," one of them said, "we need you to come with us for questioning regarding financial misrepresentation, intimidation, and obstruction." Grant froze. For the first time since Ethan had known him, Grant looked uncertain. "You can't be serious," Grant said, standing. "This is harassment." The investigator remained calm. "You are not under arrest at this moment. You are required to cooperate." Grant's eyes darted to Ethan, burning with fury. "You did this." Ethan answered evenly. "No. You did." Grant's mouth opened, searching for laughter, for charm, for control. None came. Security stepped closer. Grant's shoulders sagged just slightly as reality settled in. He straightened his jacket out of habit, a reflex from a life where appearance had always been armor. As he was escorted toward the door, Grant stopped and turned back one last time. "You think this makes you strong?" he asked. "Using your kids as shields?" The words snapped something inside Ethan. He stepped forward, voice low and steady. "I didn't bring my children into this. You did. And that's why you lost." Grant held his gaze for a long second, then turned away. The door closed behind him. Silence followed, heavy and final. Elaine exhaled. That escalated. Ethan sat down slowly, hand steady despite the adrenaline roaring through him. "It had to." Marianne studied him. "You understand this will go public?" Ethan nodded. "Good." The rest of the day blurred into controlled chaos. Statements drafted. Legal strategies outlined. Security protocols expanded. Ethan signed documents without hesitation, each signature another boundary drawn. By evening, the news broke. Executive suspended amid fraud investigation. CEO accused of intimidation. Board appoints new leadership following ethics review. Ethan didn't read the comments. He went home. Lily met him at the door. "Is he gone?" Ethan knelt, brushing her hair back gently. "He can't come near us again." Noah studied his face. "Promise." Ethan didn't rush the answer. He chose the words carefully. "I promise I will always protect you." That night, after the kids slept, Ethan sat alone on the couch, exhaustion settling into his bones. His phone buzzed once more. Unknown number. No message this time. Just silence. Ethan deleted the number and powered the phone off. Outside, the city carried on, unaware that a line had been crossed and enforced. Inside, a single father leaned back, eyes closed, knowing the fight wasn't over, but knowing something else too. Grant Hollis had finally met consequences. And Ethan Carter had learned that power meant nothing if it wasn't used to protect what mattered most. Tomorrow would bring headlines, hearings, and pressure. But tonight, his children slept safely. And that was enough. The news broke before sunrise, spilling across screens and radios while most of the city was still half asleep. Ethan saw it first on his phone while standing at the kitchen counter, pouring cereal for Noah. The headline was blunt, stripped of emotion, the way institutions preferred their scandals. Senior executives suspended amid fraud and intimidation probe. Beneath it, a smaller line. Board confirms new interim leadership. Noah looked up from his bowl. "Why are you staring like that?" Ethan forced a smile. "Just reading." Lily leaned over the counter, squinting at the screen. "Is that about the mean man?" Ethan locked the phone and slipped it into his pocket. "Yes," he said gently. "But it's being handled." Lily nodded, satisfied enough, and returned to her toast. Children accepted answers, adults complicated. By the time Ethan reached the office, reporters had gathered outside the building. Cameras followed him as he walked past, questions fired like darts. "Mr. Carter, did you orchestrate this? Is the company in danger? Were your children involved in the complaint?" Ethan said nothing. He entered the building without looking back. Inside, the atmosphere vibrated with anxiety. Employees clustered around screens, reading updates, whispering. Some looked afraid. Others looked relieved. A few looked angry, as if the truth itself had betrayed them. Ethan moved through it all quietly, nodding, acknowledging presence without feeding panic. Jennifer Hale caught up to him near the elevators. "We're getting flooded with emails," she said. "People are scared." Ethan nodded. "Schedule another all-hands." She blinked. "Today." "Now," he said. Within an hour, the auditorium filled again. This time, the silence felt different. Heavier. Sharper. Expectant. Ethan stepped onto the stage and waited until every whisper died. "I won't pretend this morning didn't shake you," he began. "It should have." He paused, letting the weight settle. "There is an active investigation into past leadership decisions," he continued. "That truth is public now, and it won't be buried again." Someone near the back called out, voice tight, "Are we going under?" Ethan shook his head. "No. Payroll is secure. Operations continue. This company is not collapsing." Another voice followed. "What about layoffs?" Ethan answered clearly. "Layoffs remain frozen." A ripple of relief moved through the room. "But," Ethan added, "freezing fear is not the same as fixing the cause. That's what we're doing now." He outlined reforms with precision. Independent oversight. Whistleblower protection. Clear reporting lines. Ethical performance incentives. No grandstanding. No applause cues. Just structure. A woman in the front row raised her hand, eyes wet. "Why should we trust this?" Ethan met her gaze. "Because you don't have to trust me. You can verify me." The words landed. After the meeting, some employees approached him quietly. A man thanked him for rehiring his wife. A woman admitted she'd been afraid to speak for years. Ethan listened more than he talked. Trust was not claimed. It was earned. By afternoon, the stock stabilized. Not high, not safe, but steady. Analysts praised transparency. Others warned of risk. Ethan accepted both. Marianne Wexler called him into her office. "You handled that well." Ethan shrugged slightly. "I told the truth." Marianne studied him. "That's rarer than you think." Legal teams moved quickly. Statements were refined. Language was chosen carefully. Ethan approved none that felt dishonest, even when advised to soften edges. He refused euphemisms. Words mattered. That evening, Ethan went home early. Lily met him at the door, backpack still on. "You're home before dinner." Ethan smiled. "I promised." Noah ran into his legs. "Did everyone stop yelling?" Ethan knelt. "Not yet. But they're listening." Dinner was simple. Pasta. Bread. Conversation about school projects and dinosaurs. For 1 hour, the world outside did not exist. After the kids went to bed, Ethan sat at the table with his laptop open again. Messages flooded in. Support. Criticism. Threats disguised as advice. He logged each one, forwarded what mattered, ignored what didn't. Then a notification appeared. Grant Hollis's name. A statement released through his attorney. Mr. Hollis denies all allegations and asserts that recent events are the result of a hostile takeover fueled by personal vendettas. Ethan read it once, then closed the file. Grant was still fighting the truth. That night, rain tapped softly against the windows. Ethan stood in the hallway, watching his children sleep. Lily's brow was smooth again. Noah's breathing steady. He thought of the auditorium. The fear. The hope. He thought of the cost of exposure, the people who would lose illusions, the systems that would resist change. Truth was never gentle. But it was necessary. The next morning, the company's internal portal updated. A message from Ethan, short and unembellished. "We will not hide. We will not rush. We will rebuild." Employees began sharing it. Quietly. Deliberately. By noon, the story had shifted. Not redemption. Not victory. Correction. Ethan sat in his office, reading reports, aware that pressure still pressed in from every side. He was not naive. Grant still had allies. Lawsuits would come. The climb ahead was steep. But something fundamental had changed. The truth was no longer a rumor. It was a fact. And facts, once spoken aloud, had a way of reshaping the world around them, whether anyone was ready or not. Grant Hollis requested the meeting through his attorney, not through the board, not through company channels, and certainly not directly. The message was carefully written, polite enough to appear reasonable, vague enough to hide desperation. Ethan read it twice, then set it down and stared at the wall for a long moment. Part of him wanted to refuse. Part of him knew refusing would only feed Grant's narrative. So Ethan agreed. But not alone. Legal counsel would be present. Security would be nearby. The board would be notified. Everything would be documented. If Grant wanted a stage, Ethan would give him one, under bright lights, with witnesses. The meeting was scheduled for late afternoon in a neutral conference room on the 26th floor. Smaller than the boardroom. Less symbolic. A place where power felt less like a throne and more like a table. Ethan arrived first. He sat with his attorney, Lila Moreno, and waited. His hands were steady, but his mind wasn't quiet. He thought of Lily watching the door. Noah asking if the mean man was gone. He thought of the messages Grant had sent, the school incident, the threat that said, "Next time, you won't get there first." The door opened. Grant walked in alone. No entourage. No confident laughter. No casual swagger. He still wore a tailored suit, but it hung a little differently, like the man inside it had lost weight or certainty. His hair was still styled, but not perfectly. His eyes looked tired in a way Ethan had never seen before. Grant glanced at the attorney beside Ethan, then at the security guard outside the door, then back at Ethan. His mouth tightened. "So this is how it is," he said quietly. "Witnesses." Ethan's voice was calm. "Accountability." Grant sat slowly, folding his hands together like he was trying to keep them from shaking. For a moment, he said nothing. The silence stretched. Ethan didn't fill it. He'd learned that people revealed more when you let them sit in the quiet. Grant finally exhaled. "I didn't think you'd go this far." Ethan met his gaze. "You went to my kid's school." Grant's face flickered. "I know." Ethan's tone sharpened just slightly. "Say it." Grant swallowed. "I should not have done that." Ethan didn't nod. Didn't reward him. "Why did you?" Grant's eyes dropped to the table. "Because you took everything," he whispered. Ethan's jaw tightened. "You think you owned it." Grant looked up fast, anger flashing. "It was mine." Ethan leaned forward, voice low. "It was a company, built by thousands. You treated it like a toy." Grant's shoulders sagged again. "I didn't mean for it to," he stopped, searching for words. "I didn't mean for it to get out of control." Ethan stared at him. "You didn't mean for people to lose jobs? You didn't mean to inflate numbers? You didn't mean to threaten me?" Grant's voice broke slightly. "I meant to win." The honesty landed like a confession. Ethan sat back. "There it is." Grant's hands tightened together. "You always had this moral thing," he muttered. "Like you were better than everyone." Ethan's eyes hardened. "I wasn't better. I was tired. Tired of watching people get crushed." Grant's mouth twisted. "And now you're the hero." Ethan shook his head once. "I'm not a hero. I'm a father trying to keep his kids safe." Grant flinched at the word father like it stung. He stared at Ethan for a long moment, then said it. "I'm sorry." The room went still. Ethan didn't respond. Grant's brow furrowed. "I said I'm sorry." Ethan's voice remained flat. "For what?" Grant blinked, thrown. "For—" He stopped. He tried again. "For laughing at you. For embarrassing you." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "That's not the worst thing you did." Grant's throat bobbed. For the school." Ethan waited. Grant's voice dropped. "For using your kids." Ethan's jaw tightened. "And—" Grant hesitated too long. Ethan felt the answer in that hesitation. "You're sorry because you're cornered," Ethan said calmly. "Not because you understand." Grant's face flushed. "That's not fair." Ethan leaned forward slightly. "Fair? You don't get to ask for fair." Grant's eyes shimmered with anger, maybe fear. "What do you want from me?" Ethan answered without hesitation. The truth. Grant's lips parted. The truth is complicated. Ethan's voice sharpened. No. The truth is simple. You lied. You endangered people. You tried to intimidate me. Now you're facing consequences. Grant's hands shook visibly now. If I cooperate, he said quietly, do I go to prison? Ethan held his stare. That's not up to me. Grant swallowed hard, and for the first time, he looked like someone who had never imagined himself on the losing side of life. You don't understand, he whispered. My father, he built this. I was supposed to protect it. Ethan's voice softened, but only a little. Protecting something doesn't mean controlling it. Grant looked away. I didn't think the board would choose you. Ethan nodded once. You didn't think anyone would choose truth over you. Grant's jaw clenched. So that's it. You just destroy me. Ethan shook his head. You destroyed yourself. Grant stared at him, breathing hard, then leaned forward, voice raw. You know what the worst part is? You didn't even look happy when you won. Ethan's eyes were steady. Because this isn't a game. Silence settled again, heavier now, final. Ethan's attorney cleared her throat. Mr. Hollis, are you prepared to cooperate fully with investigators? Grant closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, something had shifted. Resignation, maybe. He nodded once, small. Yes. Ethan watched him, feeling no triumph, no satisfaction. Only a quiet relief that the fighting might finally stop. Grant stood slowly. At the door, he paused without turning. You're going to hate me forever, he said. Ethan answered simply. I'm going to protect my kids forever. Grant left. And Ethan sat there for a long moment, realizing that some apologies were not bridges. They were evidence. The morning after the meeting with Grant felt strangely quiet. No urgent messages. No threats disguised as advice. No legal alerts flashing red across Ethan's phone. The silence unsettled him at first. He had learned, over the past weeks, to live inside pressure, to measure hours by tension and breath by resolve. Peace, when it arrived, felt unfamiliar, like a room he hadn't been in for years. Ethan woke before his alarm and lay still, listening. Lily's soft breathing drifted from her room. Noah shifted in his sleep, mumbling something about dinosaurs. The apartment smelled faintly of detergent and last night's pasta. Ordinary. Precious. He stood, dressed quietly, and made breakfast. When the kids shuffled into the kitchen, Lily rubbed her eyes and frowned in confusion. You're not rushing. Ethan smiled. I don't need to today. Noah climbed onto his chair. Did the fighting stop? Ethan considered the question carefully. The loud part did. Lily tilted her head. Is that good? Yes, Ethan said. That's very good. They ate slowly. No screens. No headlines. Just cereal, toast, and a conversation about school projects and which dinosaur would win in a race. Ethan walked them to school again, waited until they disappeared through the doors, and only then turned toward the city. At the office, the atmosphere had changed. People smiled. Not the forced, careful smiles of survival, but small, genuine ones. Conversations resumed at normal volume. Someone laughed in a hallway, then looked startled, as if unsure laughter was still allowed. Ethan passed desks, nodding, listening. He stopped at a cubicle where a woman stood organizing papers with shaking hands. You okay? He asked gently. She looked up, surprised. I think so, she said. It just feels different. Ethan nodded. Different doesn't have to mean dangerous. She smiled, relief flickering across her face. By mid-morning, Marianne Wexler called him into her office. She gestured for him to sit, studying him with an expression that mixed respect and curiosity. You did what we hoped, she said. And more. Ethan shrugged slightly. I did what needed doing. Marianne leaned back. The board wants to discuss making your position permanent. Ethan didn't answer immediately. He thought of school pickups, bedtime stories, soccer practices he hadn't yet scheduled. I'll consider it, he said honestly. Marianne nodded. That's all I ask. The day moved forward without drama. Reports reviewed. Meetings ended on time. Decisions made without shouting. Ethan noticed something important. People were no longer afraid to speak. That evening, Ethan left the office before sunset. He picked up Lily and Noah himself. Lily skipped beside him. Noah held his hand. No one followed. No cameras waited. For the first time in weeks, Ethan felt invisible again, and the relief nearly knocked him off balance. At home, they cooked together. Lily stirred sauce. Noah sprinkled cheese everywhere except the bowl. Ethan laughed, really laughed, and realized how long it had been since the sound came easily. After dinner, Lily asked, "Are you rich now?" Ethan smiled. "Not like in the movies." Noah looked serious. "But you're our boss, right?" Ethan knelt, meeting their eyes. "No. You're mine." They giggled. Later, after baths and pajamas, Ethan tucked them into bed. Lily grabbed his sleeve. "You're not going away, right?" Ethan's chest tightened. "No," he said softly. "I'm staying." She nodded, satisfied, and turned over. When the apartment finally fell quiet, Ethan sat alone on the couch. The city lights glowed through the window. His phone buzzed with one last update from legal. Grant Hollis had formally agreed to cooperate. Investigations would continue. Consequences would follow. Ethan set the phone aside. He didn't feel victorious. He felt finished. Finished with fear dictating his choices. Finished with silence pretending to be peace. Finished with the idea that power was something you took instead of something you used carefully. He walked to the hallway and stood between his children's rooms, listening again to their breathing. Claire's face came to mind, not sharp with grief this time, but warm with memory. He imagined her smile, the way she always said he worried too much. "I kept my promise," he whispered into the dark. The next weeks unfolded quietly. Systems changed. People returned. Trust rebuilt slowly, brick by brick. Ethan accepted the permanent role, but on his terms. Flexible hours. Clear boundaries. No exceptions when it came to his kids. Some investors complained. Others adapted. Ethan didn't chase approval. One afternoon, months later, Ethan walked through the lobby of the building. A man in a suit glanced at his shoes, then quickly looked away. Ethan smiled to himself. The shoes were still scuffed. He hadn't bothered replacing them yet. They reminded him where he'd come from. At home that night, Lily did homework at the table while Noah lined up dinosaurs. Ethan cooked dinner, humming softly. There was no audience. No applause. Just life, steady and real. As they ate, Noah looked up suddenly. "Daddy." "Yes." "Did the mean man lose?" Ethan considered the question, then shook his head gently. "He didn't lose," he said. "He chose wrong." "That's different." Noah nodded, accepting this like a profound truth. After bedtime, Ethan turned off the lights and sat in the quiet once more. The journey that had begun with laughter in a hallway ended here, in a small apartment filled with safety. Power hadn't changed him. Responsibility had. And that, Ethan knew, was what really mattered. Before you go, if this story moved you, even a little, don't forget to subscribe. We share real, emotional stories about underdogs, hidden strength, justice, and redemption, the kind of stories that remind you that character still matters. New videos are posted regularly, and the next one might be the one that stays with you long after the screen goes dark. Subscribe now, and be part of a community that believes quiet strength always wins.